make sure I say everything. I also have inattentive ADHD, so if you just see me looking down, excuse me, I'm sorry. But yes, my dad really wasn't in my life. I was raised by my grandma and my mom. I spent a lot of time with like a bunch of family members, like when I was younger. So just so y'all can get to know me a little better, and you'll kind of understand this season of the podcast a lot better, because it's more personal, I would say. A little bit different from the first few seasons. That was kind of like our foundation and what we were built on. But since we've been up and running for a year now, I just really wanted to let y'all in a lot more and get to know me a little bit better. And so I'm going to start off with a very important point of my story, because this is kind of where everything ties back to. I was molested when I was a little kid, and I always say like more times than I could even imagine, and more times than I could even count on, 2 hands or whatever. And I really grew up feeling like I didn't really fit in different circles and friends and everything. And I guess God really already knew what he was doing in my life. So my relationship with God started like at birth. So you'll kind of hear me talking about that this season. And sorry, looking at my notes again. So I fell in love with fashion. So I'm going to start all the way at the beginning. I fell in love with fashion like 5th grade. I was watching That's So Raven, and I actually love That's So Raven. And that actually started like my whole career, like me planning what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I just knew I wanted to be a fashion designer, but clearly God had other plans for me. I spent a lot of my childhood just kind of feeling like a burden. So I would watch a lot of TV, just figuring out what I wanted to do. And I just knew fashion was it. And once I got into high school, like my teen years, I started to really go through a lot. I started to see how me being molested as a kid affected me. And I actually fell into like a really deep depression when I was in high school. So for 4 years, I would say I just used to cry myself to sleep, kind of just feeling like I didn't really have anybody to turn to, because at this time, my perception of God, like I didn't really understand that even in those moments, I really should have been turning to him and just leaning on him. I mean, I did pray. I was actually in a group called Chosen Daughters of Destiny, which I will actually be talking about on the first episode, just how that was and the owner, and how that kind of sparked my relationship with God in a deeper way. But still, at that time, I was still super depressed. Like all 4 years of high school, people would be like, why aren't you smiling? Why? Like, you should be happy. Like, I was on the homecoming court and snow court, but I just was never happy. It was just super just hard. So, for anybody who went through that, I know you can totally relate. But so anybody who's actually watching this video is actually going to go up on YouTube. So if you missed it, I just wanted to throw that in there. So yes, I'm going to check my notes again. Oh, so back to high school. In high school, super depressed. I also had a pretty bad eating disorder that I didn't really realize that I had until I got to college, and that I never really talked about much. But yeah, I was just realizing in high school that all the things that I was going through really were affecting me so badly, because I had been molested when I was a kid, and I didn't really correlate all the things together. And I also realized, because of my childhood, that I also was kind of attracted to all the same type of people. And I fell in love like really quickly at a young age because I just always wanted to be loved and just wanted to be accepted, but I didn't realize like how dangerous that could be. And I talk with my hands a lot, so y'all gonna see me just like moving. Sorry, that's just something I gotta work on. But yeah, I fell in love really quickly. And if you have listened, you know that I did get married earlier this year. Me and my husband actually have known each other for quite a long time. I've known him since 8th grade. And we didn't start dating though until like 10th grade. I was like 15 when we actually started dating. And that's like a story for a whole nother day. But one thing that I realized this year, because I feel like since I had my son, I've been just growing so much and just learning different things about myself. And one of those things was that a lot of the relationships that I had where trauma really was what attached us to each other, like those relationships I kind of let go. So all the pain that I had been through, everything that I had just witnessed, all of that had really affected like the people that I was attracting, the friendships I was attracting, the relationships I was attracting. So it was all through trauma. So I had a lot of trauma attachments. I've been codependent a lot. And that now me and my husband, we're actually working on just like breaking that, because what connected us is not what connects us anymore. And I know it'll probably be a lot of people who can relate to that, especially if you've been with your partner for a long time. And if you haven't, you should heal before you try to, get into any situations, because if you notice like I'm always attracted to this type of person, there's a reason why, and it's most likely because of something that you don't know. Like the trauma can really affect the people attracted to you and the people you're attracted to. Like a cool fact is, it's not cool, but it's something that I realized again. I was always attracted to guys who did not live with their parents or didn't have good relationships with their mom. So they would live with like an auntie or a cousin or, something like that. And it's crazy because my mom was the same way. And a lot of things that I've been through, my mom went through. And I'm pretty sure my grandma went through them as well. It's like if you don't heal, you just continuously like repeat those cycles. And that's like one of the main reasons that I started this podcast. And we'll get into that. But so yeah. Sorry, I gotta check my notes again. So yeah. Fast forward, I was kind of just living in the world from the time I got out of college, got my first job. I had been in my job for 5 years, and we'll kind of get back to that. But I ended up having my son while I was at my job in August of 2018. And I was so excited. Like I planned for him. I was taking like these hypnobirthing classes. I was like, I gotta have a doula. I gotta, interview my midwife. I gotta interview my doula. I had all these questions. I had, was listening to the pregnancy podcast. I was researching like, okay, how big is the baby? What should I be doing for this, and this? So doing everything. And hypnobirthing is supposed to be like pain-free birthing. And it worked. It did work. But I will say, so I was laboring for like 3 days. So I'm just going to go into detail because this is super important to just like where I ended up. As far as like after I had my son, I completely lost my faith. It was just non-existent. I couldn't think straight. I was so like controlling. But yeah, so laboring for 3 days. The nurse, when I went to the hospital, the nurse actually ended up breaking my water while she was checking me. There was meconium in there. From here, it just went downhill. As I'm practicing my pain-free, they're telling me how strong I am, trying to get him out. More people are rushing in. He ended up coming out. He wasn't breathing. They had to take him away. I didn't even get to hold him or anything. And he ended up having to stay in the hospital for 2 months. And it was just really hard. Like, one person would tell me one thing, another person would tell me another thing. Hey. And it was just a lot. It was a lot to even think about. It was a lot that was just going on while we were there. We actually stayed in a Ronald McDonald house, which was amazing, but that whole situation really just made me lose my faith, because I'm like, God, I did everything. I planned everything. I was prepared, I was practicing my breathing techniques from the time I found out I was pregnant or whatever, and I just didn't understand at that point. But then I realized that I was really just being controlling. I was not trusting God. I realized this after. And so after the 2 months, we ended up going home. I ended up seeing a therapist, and she was really helping, but I didn't know that I had an undiagnosed other illness, which was inattentive ADHD. So that was a big situation for me, because becoming a parent, my life had changed so much to the point where I didn't even realize that, okay, this is happening and everything is different. Like, I had a rug on the balcony. I couldn't even get up and go get it. And it was just hard. Like, there were so many changes at that point in time. I was so anxious. I went through a really bad postpartum depression, but it was more so anxiety and worry. I was just always worried that something would happen to my son, that I might drop him, that he might fall, that he might not have enough food. I was also breastfeeding. Like, there were so many worries, and if I would have just knew known then what I know now, I would have been in a completely different place. So yeah, and then I started thinking, like, what if my grandma had a journal? What if she wrote down everything that she went through in life? Like, my grandma never got married, and I didn't find out till recently that she was just afraid of being cheated on. That was it. So I never even asked that. I wasn't wise enough at that age to even ask the question, but I was just thinking, like, okay, if my mom had a journal, I would have known so much about her story. And that's like when God planted the seed in there. And then I remember, like, January 2019, I was getting my eyelashes done by a friend, and I was just asking her, oh, you had your son 2 pounds 5 ounces. Wow. That's amazing. How old is he now? Yeah, my son was born at almost 10 pounds. Oh my goodness. And that's a whole nother story, because I know next baby, I'm going to definitely have to really, really watch what I eat. But, yeah, and even things like that, like just knowing the history of what our families go through, and knowing, like, okay, this is what they went through, so let me kind of understand, because I didn't know that I was a big baby and that my son was delivered the same way I was delivered. So just keeping a journal to keep track of, like, all those things. Oh, amazing. He's 6 now and healthy. Yeah, my son is going on 2 next month, so he's super healthy now and full of life. Yes, praise God. Our little miracle babies. So, a big part of what I went through with my son, I feel like, in a sense, I started over with God, like, having him, God birthed this idea that was inside of me, and that promotes, like, my mission now. And that is to create generational cycles, to break generational cycles by documenting our journey, because we are generational healers, all of us. And the It's Not Your Diary podcast pretty much helps listeners journal their way to healing through faith and understanding, because what we journal about today affects the generations to come. And something else that I feel like I was really struggling with for so long that I didn't realize until after I had him was just like this need to be in control. Like, okay, I had to plan. I felt like I needed to plan to have this child instead of letting God do what he needed to do. And I felt like I needed to put a camera in his room when he was in the hospital. I felt like I just always needed to have this control that I never had. Like the control that I felt like I needed, it was never there. It was just in my mind. And that's really one of the reasons why I was like, I'm happy that everybody voted on doing this, giving up control, letting go, journal mission with me, because we send out journals daily. So if you subscribe to the link in our bio, it's free. We send out journals to kind of help people just deal with everyday things. And for the month of August, we're doing a 35-day challenge. I added 5 more days in there just for this week, because I'm like, we might as well start now, because this is something that so many people deal with. So yeah, we'll be doing that for August. And anybody that feels like they want to continue, we'll be doing a free we'll be doing a little video after for any questions, anything that you're confused about. I mean, for me, giving up control was like the hardest thing. Like going to God, even for my weight had been a problem my entire life. And once I started just surrendering everything to him, fasting for the things that I wanted, praying for the things that I wanted, praying for the people in my life, tithing consistently, and just seeking God, everything just started to happen. And I got my journal from 2019, March 2019. I actually read this on the podcast before, but I just want to share with all of our new followers and everybody who's been joining us lately over this little break, that in March 2019, I was insecure, immature, inconsistent. I was dealing with depression, anxiety, social and internal, fear, sadness, hurt, hopelessness, heartbreak. I had a restless mind. It just never stopped. I was just frustrated all the time. I needed to be in control of everything. And I was just focused on my vision for my life. Like I said in the beginning, I thought I was going to be a fashion designer. And then I got laid off like in May when Corona started. So just being able to get to a point where worry and everything didn't control me anymore, I reached that like a year later. And what's crazy is I was listening to another podcast, and this podcast was the one that really saved me. But I mean, completely different construct, completely different vision versus mine, because hers is more so business, but it's still faith-based. And finally letting go of what I wanted, and finally letting go of my vision for my life, and just telling God, like, take the wheel, take over, you control this, I'm gonna listen to you, I'm gonna do everything that you say. He said give him 1 year, I gave him a year. Literally completely different place. Like, I got laid off from my job, and I was like, God, thank you for making a way, because I was miserable. I hated my job. It was what I always wanted to do, never what God wanted me to do. But now being aligned with his plan for my life, insecurity where? Worry where? I only want to live out God's plan for my life. So yeah, that is a little bit about me and my story, and dang, I finished pretty quickly. And I got a one viewer on. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna be posting this to YouTube. It's not gonna stay on Instagram. So if they missed out, they missed out. Oh well. But yes, we also sell merch at our store. We have our healing merch. So yes. Um I'm going to be posting this on YouTube, and I will talk to y'all next time I go live. Oh, and our season is starting in 1 week. 1 week from today, 12 a.m. You'll probably be asleep if you're from the United States. I will be posting, next Monday, season 4. Talk to y'all then. Bye.